Her true story from Tennessee. My son and daughter-in-law left me at the airport with no money. They had no idea I was on my way to meet my attorney. You know what, Mom? We only bought you a one-way ticket. The return trip, you'll figure it out. That was what my daughter-in-law said as she rolled her designer suitcase into the first-class lane, not even looking back at me. She smiled. The kind of smile people wear when they believe they are helping you by telling you something uncomfortable. You've got a phone. Call someone to pick you up or sell it. That should cover a Greyhound, right? And just like that, they were gone. Gone through the security checkpoint. Gone into the corridor of airport gates and vacation photos. Gone with whatever dignity I still had left in their eyes. I stood alone in the middle of Nashville International Airport, clutching my purse tightly to my chest. No suitcase, no boarding pass, no return ticket, just a thin sweater and a printed itinerary I now understood was only for appearances. They had never intended for me to return with them. I was never really meant to be part of that trip. The airport noise surrounded me, boarding calls, rolling luggage echoing across the floor, laughter in languages I no longer focused on. I felt like I was standing still in a place that never stops moving. People glanced at me and quickly looked away. One woman gave a polite smile that turned into pity when she noticed I had no luggage. I wanted to disappear. For a moment, I almost did. Only hours earlier, I had believed I was part of something, a family trip they called a healing getaway after the funeral. My husband, may he rest in peace, had died just 2 months before. 42 years of marriage ended on a rainy Monday when we buried him. They told me I needed air, that I needed to stop crying, that the trip would help. So I went. I even sold the last pearl necklace he ever gave me to help with the tickets. It's a group effort, they said. Everyone is contributing. But I never saw any receipts, never saw return details. I didn't question it because I was raised to trust family, even when they stop acting like it. At check-in, I noticed something strange. Tanya's mother had a priority tag. Mark had a first-class ticket. So did Tanya. I assumed I would board separately. Tanya told me they would come back for me after takeoff, but that changed when my ticket was scanned. Sorry, ma'am, the agent said, frowning politely. There is no return flight under your name. I tried to smile it off. There must be a mistake. But when I turned around, they were already walking away. I followed them toward security, holding my folder of documents. That's when Tanya stopped, sighed, and said words I now believe were planned. You know what, Mom? We only bought you a one-way ticket. The return trip, you'll figure it out. She said it casually, like she was talking about the weather. Then she added that I could sell my phone if I needed bus fare. Mark didn't correct her. He didn't even look at me. They left me there like something unimportant, used and discarded. I stood in place long after they disappeared, too shocked to move, too proud to sit down. I didn't cry yet. I just breathed slowly, one breath at a time. It reminded me of something I hadn't felt since I was 9 years old, waiting for a father who never returned from a short trip to another town. And here I was again. Only this time I had raised the person who walked away from me. People continued moving around me. A man with a stroller passed. Teenagers in matching outfits called out to each other. A flight to Orlando was boarding. Sunlight reflected off the glass walls and made my eyes sting. I looked at my phone, not expecting a message, but to confirm it was still there. It was the only thing that made me feel I still existed. I thought about calling someone. But who? My sister was gone. My friends had their own lives, their own struggles. I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone I had been left at an airport by my own family, so I didn't. Instead, I took a breath, walked to a nearby bench, and sat upright. I may not have had a ticket home, but I had something else. Hidden inside my bra, close to my heart, was a small envelope. Inside it was a lawyer's business card, my late husband's old friend, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, but who once told me, "If you ever need anything, Blake, just call." Now I would. Because even if I had been left with nothing, I still had a next step. Grief doesn't arrive gently. It doesn't ask permission. It breaks in and stays like it has always belonged there. That is how it felt when Jake died. One moment he was in the kitchen humming off-key, asking where I hid the cinnamon. The next, he was on the hallway floor, coffee still warm in his hand. The doctors called it a massive stroke, final, irreversible. We had been married 42 years. 42 years of routines, arguments that ended quietly, shared glances without words, raising a son, losing a pregnancy, trying again, building a life through each other's habits and laughter. He died on a Tuesday morning. It was raining, soft rain that soaked in without warning. I remember standing at the sink afterward, watching water slide down the window like it was trying to find its way back. I didn't move. I didn't cry at first. I just listened to how silent everything had become. The days that followed blurred together. Food brought by neighbors, condolences from people I barely remembered. The funeral was short. Jake never liked attention. He used to joke that if anyone cried at his funeral, they should bring a mop. Afterward, I went back to the house alone. Everything felt larger. The bed, the rooms, even the silence. His slippers were still under the bed. His toothbrush still beside mine, as if nothing had changed, but everything had. Days passed slowly. Some days I barely left the chair he used to sit in. I tried to remember his laugh. I tried to remember who I was before I became someone left behind. Then one morning, Mark came over. He hugged me briefly and said, "Mom, we think it would be good for you to get away." "Away?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "A short trip, Florida. We're going for spring break. You should come." Tanya nodded beside him. "Just to clear your mind, a change of scenery." They spoke as if they had rehearsed it. I hadn't left Tennessee in years. The idea of sunlight, of sand, of something different stirred something I thought I had lost. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Of course," Tanya said. "Your family." That word held me for a moment. Later, I opened my jewelry box, the one untouched since the funeral. Inside was my wedding band from Jake. Simple gold, not expensive, but meaningful. He had saved for months to buy it for our 10th anniversary, placing it on my finger with a quiet promise, 10 more years, then 10 more after that. I wore it every day until he died. That day, I held it in my hand for a long time. Then I sold it at a pawn shop. "Are you sure, ma'am?" the man asked. "Yes," I said. The money went toward the trip. I thought I was contributing. I thought I was included. That night, I cried alone. Not just for Jake, but because I felt, for the first time in weeks, something like hope. I packed carefully. A framed photo of Jake went into my bag. My softest sweater, a beach towel I hadn't used in years, a book I had meant to read, a tissue folded neatly at the top. I didn't know that by the time I reached the airport, none of it would matter, that I would not be leaving with the same life I thought I had. I believed I was part of a family plan. I was wrong. There is a silence that comes when you realize you were never part of the plan at all. Not forgotten, chosen out. It happened at the airline counter. "Ma'am, there is no return flight under your name," the agent said. I told her I was traveling with my son's family. She checked again. "Only 6 return tickets are booked. You are not listed." Behind me, I saw them, Mark and Tanya, already laughing near the coffee stand. When I asked Mark, he hesitated, then said, "We thought you might want to stay longer." Tanya was more direct. "We only booked you a one-way. Flights are expensive. You're retired. You can manage." "I thought this was a round trip," I said quietly. "You're an adult," she replied. "You'll figure it out." Mark avoided my eyes. "You've got your phone," Tanya added. "This isn't a charity trip." And just like that, they walked away. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement. I stood there, realizing I didn't even have my luggage. They had taken it earlier, saying they would handle it. I asked about it. "Oh, it's with ours," Tanya said. "We'll return it if you stay longer." That's when I understood completely. No return ticket, no belongings, no warning. "You're overreacting," Tanya said when I tried to speak. Mark added, "We thought it would be easier this way." Easier for who? They left for security while I remained behind. I sat later on a bench, hands shaking. I didn't call them. I didn't call anyone. Instead, I opened my phone and wrote a single sentence. "This is the last time I trust them." Then I called the lawyer. "I need to update my will," I said. And something shifted. I was no longer the person they left behind. I was the person deciding what came next. I stayed in the airport long after their flight boarded. I watched their names disappear from the screen. I didn't follow them. Instead, I waited and thought. A 50 here, a 20 there. Sometimes 100 would slip in after a tax return. It was never meant for groceries or small gifts. It was meant for a day when one of us had no one left to depend on and needed to act quickly. I unfolded the envelope. $960,000 in cash, still crisp from the bank. It wasn't a fortune, but it was mine. And more importantly, it was enough. I flagged down a cab outside the airport and gave the driver an address I hadn't said in years, 287 Jefferson Street, Monroe and Wade Law Office. He nodded and pulled into traffic. The cab smelled faintly of pine and fried food. I watched the familiar streets pass, strip malls, gas stations, and the worn-down center of Tennessee where I had lived most of my life. The last time I had been at that law office, Jake had just retired. We were there to sign our first will. Back then, it was simple, everything to each other, then to Mark. We trusted our future, and we trusted our son. Now I wasn't sure of anything, except one thing. The name in that document no longer deserved what it promised. JR was still there, older, slower to stand, but still firm in his handshake. "Blake," he said, surprised. "I haven't seen you in years. I'm sorry about Jake." "Thank you," I replied, sitting down carefully. "I need to change my will." He raised his eyebrows. "Anything specific?" "I want my son and daughter-in-law removed completely." A pause. "Are you certain?" "I'm certain." He didn't question further. He knew Jake well enough to understand I didn't make decisions lightly. He opened a folder and waited. "I want to add a new beneficiary," I continued. "An organization that supports elderly people mistreated by their families." "That's very specific," he said. "I've become very specific." He nodded. "We can do that. I'll need paperwork." "I already have it." I handed him a printed pamphlet from the community center. I had picked it up months ago without thinking I would ever use it. As he entered the details, I leaned forward. "And I want legal protection for what happened to me. Being left behind, misled. I don't want it handled emotionally. I want it handled legally." "Financial exploitation?" he asked. "Yes, elder abuse." He grew more serious. "If they influenced you under false pretenses, there may be grounds, especially if you were placed in a vulnerable position." "I gave it willingly," I said, "but based on deception." He nodded. "We can look into that." "Good. I want this notarized immediately, made effective now, and handled through a third-party executor. No one in my family is to touch it again." He began typing. For the next hour, we went through every page of the old will, names, clauses, numbers. Everything Jake and I had built was revised, not out of anger, but clarity. By the time I left, I held a new folder in my hands and a new understanding of control. I stepped into the sunlight and didn't feel broken. I felt clear. I took another cab and went to a modest downtown motel. Not a permanent place, just somewhere to pause, to think. A woman without a return ticket is not lost. She is simply choosing her direction. By morning, the paperwork was complete. My son and daughter-in-law were no longer beneficiaries. Their names were removed, not replaced with revenge, but with intention. I didn't act in anger. I acted slowly, deliberately, and with awareness. Some decisions are not made in chaos. They are made in silence, after you stop expecting things to change on their own. The night before, I had sat on the motel bed with documents spread out, pages of clauses and accounts. My life reduced to structure on paper, but for the first time in years, it was mine again. It wasn't a large estate, just the house Jake and I had paid off over decades, farmland inherited from my father, a few investment accounts, and savings I had quietly kept separate. That money was meant for just in case. The case had arrived. I left everything to an organization called Elder Haven, which supports older adults abandoned or financially exploited by family, housing, legal aid, and protection. I also wrote a letter, not to one person, but to anyone who might one day sit where I had sat. "If you are reading this," I wrote, "you are not invisible, you are not imagining it, and you are not finished." Before checking out, I called JR again. "I want digital copies," I said. "Encrypted, sent only to a single email, no sharing." "Understood," he replied, "and the originals stay locked in your office, accessible only to you and the executor." "Done. And if my family contacts you, I'll remind them they were removed by your decision," he said. I exhaled. It was complete. Not in anger, but in quiet release. There is something unsettling about removing from your future the people you once built your life around. But inheritance is not just money. It is trust. And once trust is broken the way mine was, it is not repaired with apologies or gestures. It has to be earned, and they never even tried. Later that afternoon, I mailed copies of my documents, not to my family, but to a safety deposit box I opened in my own name. I listed myself as the only key holder. I updated all my account passwords. I changed every emergency contact form that still had Mark's information. At the bank, the teller asked gently, "Would you like to add a family member for access?" I smiled. "Just you? Just me." Those two words once felt lonely. Now they felt like survival, like strength, like a restart, not as someone's mother, someone's widow, or someone in the background of a story, but as a woman taking back ownership of her own life. On my way back to the motel to collect my bag, I passed a small park. Children were playing on the jungle gym, laughing loudly, completely present in the moment. I sat on a bench for a while and let the sun hit my face. I remembered something Jake used to say: "Everything you plant won't grow, but what does grow is yours." That is your legacy. I had already planted enough. Now it was time to grow something new. I went back one last time, not to argue, not to explain, not even to say goodbye, just to collect what was mine. I scheduled a moving truck for Tuesday morning, midweek, when I knew Mark and Tanya would both be at work. I did not want confrontation. I did not want another performance of concern or delayed apologies. I wanted quiet. I wanted closure. The house looked smaller when I returned, or maybe I had simply outgrown it. The paint on the shutters was fading. The front steps had weakened. The wind chimes Jake once hung still moved softly in the breeze, but they no longer brought comfort. I let myself in using the spare key, still hidden in the planter, exactly where we always kept it for emergencies. This, I thought, qualified as one. The movers arrived quickly and professionally. I had hired them from another county to avoid attention and questions. "I'll only be taking a few items," I told them. Jake's favorite chair, shaped perfectly to his years of sitting and reading, a box of books, our wedding album, his navy cap, my mother's quilt, nothing else. Not the furniture we bought together, not the dishes from family meals, not even the bed we replaced after 30 years because he said I deserved better. Only what still felt real. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen, where I baked every birthday cake. The living room where we once danced on our anniversary, just the two of us, barefoot and laughing. The hallway where Jake collapsed that day, coffee still warm in his hand. I did not cry. I had already done enough of that. Before leaving, I placed the keys in a sealed envelope on the kitchen counter with a short note. "Don't call. Don't ask. I am exactly where I want to be." Then I left. The drive to my new residence took less than 2 hours, but it felt like crossing into an entirely different life. The sign outside read Willow Grove, independent living for seniors with dignity. I had visited once before with Jake. He wanted to be prepared. I had told him I would never leave our home. He had only smiled and said, "Maybe one day, if they have good pudding." Willow Grove offered more than that. Sunlight filled wide hallways. The air smelled like lemon instead of disinfectant. Soft music played in shared spaces. People looked at you when you entered a room, not through you. "Welcome, Mrs. Monroe," the receptionist said. "We've been expecting you." It was the first time in months someone had said my name like it mattered. My room was already prepared. My boxes were placed neatly inside. My chair sat by the window overlooking the courtyard. On the table was a small welcome basket and a handwritten note from the director. "Thank you for helping make this place possible. It is yours now, too." What Mark and Tanya never knew was that Willow Grove had been partially funded through my donation to Elder Haven. My estate had become more than inheritance. It had become infrastructure for others like me. I was no longer a forgotten obligation or a background figure. I was Blake. In the days that followed, I settled in. I joined the afternoon book circle. I met Helen, a retired teacher whose humor made me laugh until I spilled coffee. I joined watercolor classes on Thursdays. I even offered to lead a letter writing workshop, something Jake and I used to do together every week. At 5 p.m., someone always came to my door to invite me to dinner, not out of duty, out of inclusion. There was a seat with my name on it, and for the first time in years, I sat without hesitation. I was not ignored. I was not tolerated. I was welcomed. The house I left behind was no longer my home, because home is not where you store your life. It is where you are wanted. And I was finally home. 6 months passed. 6 months of quiet mornings in the sunroom. 6 months of painting, reading, and hearing my name spoken with kindness. 6 months without looking back. Then it arrived. The day I had marked on my private calendar. Notification sent. That morning, JR emailed one line: "Letters have been delivered." By 11 a.m., my phone began ringing. Mark. 16 calls in one day. I watched each one appear on the screen. A name that once had power over my emotions now only brought stillness. I did not answer. Not once. No voicemail was left, only repetition. Persistence without response. By the next morning, an email arrived. Subject: "I'm sorry, Mom. At least let us keep the garden." I opened it. Not for emotion, for understanding. Mark wrote that they had received a legal notice, that they did not expect me to act on it, that maybe they had misunderstood the airport situation, that Tanya believed it was not abandonment, just convenience, that they were wrong, but it should not have led to everything being taken: the house, the land, the accounts. He asked to keep the garden, said the children had planted it, said it meant something. Then he asked for a call. 5 minutes. I read it twice, then closed the laptop. The sentence, "We didn't think you would actually go through with it," told me everything. They had assumed I would remain unchanged, that I would remain forgiving, that I would not follow through. They were wrong. Not because of anger, but because of clarity. They had not only left me at an airport, they had left me long before that, in disregard, inconvenience, in emotional absence. Now they wanted the garden. That garden they never maintained. That garden Tanya had posted online without ever mentioning me. It no longer belonged to them. It had already been redirected through Elder Haven into a therapeutic horticulture program for older women. My decision stood. That afternoon, Helen sat beside me in the library. "You've got that look again," she said. "What look?" "The one people have when they finally tell the truth about their life." I smiled. "Maybe I do." She nodded. "Good, the world needed it." I turned off my phone and wrote in my journal. Some things are inherited, some are earned, and some, like peace, are built from nothing. Let them wonder, let them call, let them miss what they ignored. I no longer owed anyone access to me. Not Mark, not Tanya, not the past version of myself that stayed too long. Here at Willow Grove, I was not a resource. I was not an obligation. I was not an afterthought. I was Blake. And I saw myself clearly for the first time in years. At night, I walked the courtyard and watched the light in the windows. I think about legacy, not as money, but as choice, the right to begin again. I chose new people, new routines, a new definition of family. And in the end, that is what family is. Chosen, present, real. And when I turn off the light each night, I am not thinking about what I lost. I am thinking about what I finally refused to keep. If this story spoke to you, if you have ever been left behind, underestimated, or forced to choose yourself, then you are not alone. This is Grandma True Stories, where silence ends and truth begins.